House Square, and I am very pleased that you all are here. I'm also pleased that it's closer to 80 than 90, given the fact that our coils froze in our cooler today. So I apologize for the heat, very much apologize for that. I want to welcome in particular those of you who have been working on criminal justice reform for decades. Many of you are here. And also to those of you for whom this issue is really being introduced to you today on a deeper level for the first time. I also want to welcome all those who did the crime, served the time, and now are seeking redemption and channeling the frustration and anger and loss into trying to change a broken system. I also want to welcome those who were unjustly jailed and sentenced, yet managed to transform their resentment into action as well. And I want to welcome all and any victims of violent crime who are transforming their pain into a better future. We need this transformative and redemptive work. So I want to ask just for a moment of silence to focus ourselves and to honor those people who have suffered, those people who have suffered from violence, both the criminal violence on the streets, but also the sanctioned violence that is inherent in our system of criminal justice reform. So we just have a moment of silence trying to nurture that form of redemptive love that will help us change the world. Thank you. Again, welcome to the Ethical Society. If you are a member of the Ethical Society, would you be kind enough to either stand or raise your hand? Just stand or raise your hand. Many of them are outside or in the back, are volunteers. These are your hosts today. Please, if you forget what I'm about to tell you, you can ask them. We welcome you. They will be able to remind you that the men's room is downstairs, the ladies' room is upstairs, and there's a unisex bathroom right on this floor right here. There's a water fountain behind the bookcase there, which should probably be folded open, if we can get that folded open so you can see it actually. And if you do get hungry and need to go up for a place to eat, if you go down the street, just go and take a left. There's a little grocery store there if you need some juice or energy. I do want to say that we have Rhonda Morty of Art for Justice provided, Rhonda, where are you? Provided tremendous snack which will come out at 5 o'clock, so if you can wait that long, there'll be a lot of food and drink then, and some entertainment as well. We're going from 2 to 6, which is a long time. If you can stay that late, that would be great. But before the reception and the entertainment, we have some work to do. Now that work is related to my work here as an ethical humanist minister. Our members come to this place because they are trying to live lives that are closer to their ideals. They're trying. We're all trying. We don't always succeed, but we try to live up to the best in life. And for us, that means deed before creed. That's one of our bumper stickers, deed before creed. It means putting aside abstract philosophical differences to honor the worth of every individual. And if you really believe in the worth of every individual, then you believe that that worth has to be spread to every person in the world, whether they're here in Philadelphia or on the other side of the world. And we do that by creating relationships between each other that can transform our system. We have to confront the systemic injustice that fosters greed rather than goodness. We have to change the system from greed to goodness. And that means building relationships. Relationships that are rational, compassionate, open, humble, and sustained. Sustained over time, because this is a long battle we've got in front of us that many of you have been fighting for decades. Whatever you get out of today, I hope that you either make new connections with other people, renew old connections, or find a deeper connection within yourself to why you are here that'll feed your ability to work on this movement in the long run. We have to communicate on a deeper level. We have to create a level of respect so that we can manage our differences. And there are many differences in this room over how we proceed in this. But let's not let those differences divide and conquer, because that has happened for too long. We have to come together so we can work on where we agree. I think, for example, most of us can agree on our history in this room. I have little personal experience in the criminal justice system, but I've taught a lot of history. I taught 25 years of U.S. history to high school students, and year after year, I had to explain to them why, in a nation that proclaims the sacredness of inalienable rights and the sanctity of equal justice under law, rich, powerful, predominantly white people systemically have oppressed and brutalized marginalized people of color. We've discussed the fact in my history class that if we could have written our history, that would not be the history we would have written. But that's the history we've been given. Year after year, I have to explain to them how in a world plentiful enough to feed, clothe, and house every child, every day 10,000 children die of starvation or hunger-related diseases in this world. I have to explain to them why a profit-fueled imperialist system bled to death hundreds of thousands of innocent people in wars from the Philippines to Vietnam to Iraq. And we discussed the fact that if we could write our history, that's not the history we would have written. But that is the history we've been given. And now, as a humanist minister, I have to explain over and over again to myself and to other people our recent history that's so well documented in books like The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander and a growing list of other activists. There are more books. Once you read that, don't stop. And once you've read it, give that book to somebody else so they can read it. In The New Jim Crow, she documents very well 30 years of knee-jerk, tough-on-crime politics that has led to an over-criminalization of the drug use in this country and has exploded the prison population from 300,000 30 years ago to over 2 million today. Most of you know this. I see some nodding. Fueled by an antiquated, oversimplified approach to crime, we have a retributive model of justice that is now a cultural cancer that is eating away the hearts of our communities. It's devastating families and neighborhoods. It's inhumane, it's classist, it's racist, it's ineffective, and it has to change. And it begins today, at least for me. So we have a system that tends to try to honor the victims of violent crime that corrodes trusts, it ends lives, it breaks hearts. We know that. Many of you know it better than anyone. But rather than protecting the innocent and caring for victims, our system focuses on punishment, pouring dollars down that too. Rather than lessening crime, our system increases crime. Rather than providing those convicted of crime opportunities for redemption, it continues this cycle of abuse. It's the history we've been given. So I find in history many humbling lessons. As a species, we make many mistakes. As individuals, we make mistakes all the time. This event today has got mistakes. It's a little warm. There was a bottleneck of people coming in. I wish I could have given more of our wonderful guests and speakers and many people today who aren't having a chance to stand at the podium, a chance to talk. But again, this is the start. This is the start. So I apologize to those of you who didn't get enough time to say and couldn't be formally included in the program today. This event is also humbling because of the hours and hours of time that our volunteers have put into it. Antoine, our custodian, you'll see walking around, has been working crazy on this. Many of the volunteers from our society, but especially my partner in this, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie is the co-founder of Art for Justice. If you haven't seen the artwork upstairs in one of the smaller rooms, I hope you get there today. The show is closing this month, so please see that. Anne-Marie, thank you for helping teach me about this and for sharing the wonderful work from the artists that you care so deeply about. So the bottom line is that in this event today, I hope that it gives each and every person here an opportunity to become more committed to social justice reform, in particular criminal justice. I hope you learn something intellectually. I hope you connect with people interpersonally. I hope you find great strength and courage to deal with this and to do what you know is right. Let's work on knowing the history so we can write our history in the future. The time's now. Thank you very much. I want to introduce our speakers now.
And the first speaker is?
Yeah, get the envelope.
Sorry, since I know most of these folks, I'm just going to rip it on out here.
This is Anne-Marie Kirk, by the way.
Hi,
Boy, sorry.
Anne-Marie. And there's some people who can't be here today. Our co-founder of Art for Justice, Charles Lawson, and now I'm going to jump right to it. So Tyrone Works spent 36 years at Grayford, and he has many, many claims behind his name. He was the president of the Lifers Association. He used to be. He was commuted by Governor Rendell. He came out, hit the road running, and he got the Soros Fellowship last year. Please welcome Tyrone Works.
Before Tyrone speaks, I want to let you know you're going to hear about 5 minutes from each of the guests today who will then be involved in small group work and workshops later, so you'll be able to talk more to them. But this is just like an introduction to their work. So.
Good afternoon, everybody. So thank you so much for that really warm welcome. I appreciate it so much. I told Anne-Marie that, did you know that today is the beginning of football season? I agreed to do this a couple months ago. I said, oh shit, that's the beginning of football season. But, you know, I am so, by the way, the Eagles losing 17-0, so I prefer to be here with you big people, you know what I mean? So, again, yes, well, thank you very much. My name is Tyrone Works. Actually, I spent close to 37 years inside the Grayford prison. In 1974, I was sentenced to life without parole. For my participation in the crime, where I wasn't really on the scene, I was a couple blocks away, and I was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life at Grayford prison. I was very fortunate that I spent my 37 years in Grayford prison, which, in the aims of how we do criminal justice in this country, Grayford prison was a pretty progressive prison. I don't think that had I not been there, I probably wouldn't be standing at this podium today. So I want to talk a little bit about the criminal justice system from my unique experience and about life without parole. You know, it's interesting that we look at what's going on in our school district here, school system here in Philadelphia, where they keep cutting money out of the school system, and they piling more and more students into classes, making class sizes a lot larger, where students can get their individual attention. And if you really look at it, I mean, that's a recipe for failure in our school system. I only say that because when I first went into Grayford, there was only 7 state prisons. 7. There were about 5,000, 6,000 prisons in the whole state. The budget was about $160, $170 million a year to run those 7 prisons. The lifer population was only 500 lifers in the whole state of Pennsylvania. If you contrast those numbers to the day when I walked out of Grayford in 2011, we have 28 state prisons, and we're building 3 more at a cost of $675 million. There are 52,000 prisoners serving time in 90% of the prisons of Pennsylvania, and the budget has ballooned to $2 billion. And that's in the face of cutbacks in our school district. And so we hear these stories about how they tested, I don't know if it's true, I may be urban rumor, but it sounds true to me, and I can't believe it, that they test 3rd grade students and they decide on what they need in terms of prison space in the future. So it's almost like they say, well, we got to balance the budget, so we got to cut funding to the schools. And we cut funding to the schools, we're going to need more prisons. That's kind of crazy, right? So that's the criminal justice system that we are presently living under. And to take it a step further, as I said, it was 500 life when I first went in. There were 5,000 men and women serving life without parole in Pennsylvania. And it's one of the harshest punishment that one can experience, aside from actually getting the death penalty. And I was just looking at this great artwork, and I knew this guy, Zafir, it's a great artist. at Greenfield Prison. You know what that picture symbolizes? Anybody tell me? Not you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to tell you what it symbolizes to me. Anybody, what does it symbolize to you? Just shout it out. Yes, all that. But more importantly, you know what? Zafir is serving life. And I think what he's trying to symbolize here is that a life sentence in Pennsylvania is a death sentence. Exactly right? Okay, that's what I got from him. And actually it is, I'm telling you, it is such an honor and a privilege for me to be standing here, you know. Most guys with life sentences, they go in the first 5, 6, 7 years, they appeal their cases, and that's how they cope with the nature of the life sentence. I did the same thing. I appealed my case for 20 years. And after about, I think I lost my last appeal in 2000. And I had to go through this deep reflection and introspection, and had to almost accept my fate that I was going to die in prison, because there's no way in Pennsylvania for people to get out. My Christian would say, well, you got the hell out. Yeah, I did. But it was by luck, and it was very, very lucky that I'm standing here. You know, so men and women in Pennsylvania who are serving life in prison just don't have a way out. They're going to die there. And I'm saying the circumstance of each individual case is vastly different. So I always tell people now, everybody that kills somebody, got life in prison, I would support life in prison. But in this state, we are picking winners and losers. You know, you could be 5 people on the case, and you could be the guy surrounding the car, and the trigger man would be home. I want to tell you about a very famous case, a guy named Steve Blackburn, who was a lifer in Pennsylvania. Steve right now is he's my role model when I was in Greenfield. He was in an argument with a guy, and a friend of his across the street saw what was going on. The friend across the street, and Steve didn't know anything about this. The guy walked across the street, pulled out a gun and shot the guy. You know how much time that guy got? He got 18 months. Steve Blackburn got life without parole. So this is the vagaries of our criminal justice system. And the one thing that I did when I went in Greenfield Prison, I told myself that understanding the nature of our criminal justice system, how brutal it is, how depressing it is, how dehumanizing it is, I made a promise to myself that I would never allow that system to take my human dignity. And that kind of carried me forward. And I tell people all the time that although I'm standing here before you, there are 1,000 men and women who deserve this opportunity to be home with their families, probably more than me. And right now I'm out and I'm working to get men and women out of prison in Pennsylvania who are sentenced to life without parole. I still support and I'm fighting for parole eligibility for lifers in this state, because there are so many men and women who deserve this opportunity. I remember vividly the day that I walked out of Greenfield. I was, as Emily said, I was president of the life organization for 20 years. And I had this great privilege of leading 800 men and serving life in Greenfield prison. And so the day that I was going home, there were like 200 men lined out in the hallway to greet me as I was pulling my personal possession down the hallway. And I'll tell you, right now, I grew up in North Philadelphia. I grew up tough as nails, don't cry, show no emotion, saw myself as a hardcore man, right? But the day I walked out of Greenfield, I walked down the hallway hugging guys, looking in their eyes, and I was weeping like a little baby. I was weeping. People say, well, you were happy that you were going home. And I was happy I was going home, but sadly, I was crying because as I looked in these guys' eyes, I knew intimately that they were going to die there unless something changed. And I grew up with those guys. Man,
after prison sentence, is there a system or something to help them get their land and property back? Or do they lose?
I don't know about that. But and so I'm committed to ending life without parole. Just okay. So since I've been home, right? I came home and I started working at Temple University for the Inside Out program. I don't know how many of you know about the Inside Out program. I also work for the Public Defenders Association in the mitigation department. I since I've been home, and I've been doing a lot of traveling and speaking about Black role in the criminal justice system in Pennsylvania. So I just want to encourage all you, everyone out in the audience, to understand what the criminal justice system does to people, what it does to communities, and I think one of the new things that people are talking about, the collateral damage that's happening in our communities. And as the speaker said before me, that our criminal justice system do not stop crime, prevent crime. Actually, it engenders crime as it tears down community music. Large swaths of men and women out in the community with children are left to be raising their own. So on that note, I'm just going to end my time is up. So thank you so very much for welcoming me to your event.
These fabulous people give a short presentation, but you're going to have an opportunity to choose which session you want to go to. So you can go and talk with Tyrone and Harold Wilson for another 45 minutes. So he's just giving you a snapshot right now, and we're going to have Masood be our timekeeper, because we would like to listen to him all day long.
Keep me on the board.
I did. I did. All right. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Jill McCorkle, and this is a fabulous woman. Her assignment as a professor at Villanova of sociology is to give a kind of overall framework of the criminal justice system in the United States and how we kind of hit this absurd downturn. I'd also like to say that Jill has taught at Graterford for years, and she has a fabulous book called Breaking Women, which is up for a national award. It's in the back. Thank you.
I want to say that I do 3 kinds of work, and then I think for my 5-minute spiel, I want to give you a little thought piece so y'all can dialogue a bit with me. I started out in graduate school. I was getting my PhD in sociology, and I was an inequality scholar. I wanted to understand why and in what ways the U.S. was stratified by race, class, and gender. And very quickly, I ended up becoming a punishment scholar and studying the U.S. prison system, because that was the primary vector through which a lot of contemporary race and class inequality particularly was playing out. And when I entered into my own dissertation research, the story that I was interested in at the time was what was happening to women during the war on drugs. Since that's a story that often is not told, but we are, and I know that you know the numbers with respect to men. There are about 112,000 women who are in state and federal prison right now. That is historically and globally unprecedented. No nation in the history of the earth has incarcerated women at the rate that we are incarcerating women. And that rate has been increasing every year since the mid-1980s. So I wrote a book about that, why it was happening, how it was happening, and the consequences of that for women and their families. So that's kind of one vector of my work. Then I became so frustrated with the system that I encountered that I decided that I wanted to do something productive rather than kind of write and theorize about what was happening. And so that the vector of kind of activism and productivity brought me to Villanova University. Villanova is one of the few universities in the country that has an undergraduate degree program at a prison. We are at SCI Graterford, which, as you know, is the largest men maximum security prison in the state of Pennsylvania. And a lot of state universities had college degree programs in prisons prior to the mid-1980s. And then during the war on drugs, President Clinton signed into law an act that eliminated any kind of funding for men to get their education. And so that pretty much just left private universities who were willing to bankroll those fees, those tuition dollars on their own. So Villanova, to its credit, hung in there. We maintained our undergraduate degree program since the 1970s. It has been uninterrupted, and I teach there usually every other year. Every so often I get investigated by security, but so far I survived. So one thing I wanted to do, and then I teach on campus, I teach a course on prisons and punishment. And one of the things that I do in the beginning of that course is to talk about mass incarceration, and just briefly to compare the numbers. And I don't want to give you a lot of numbers, but I want to have 2 cut points. And one cut point is 1980. In 1980, there were 300,000 adults, men and women, who were incarcerated in state and federal prison. And in 1980, everyone considered that number to be outrageously high, 300,000. And you know now that we're over 1.5 million, and that's not including who's in jail, and that's not including who's on probation and parole. That's just who's serving an actual sentence, state and federal prisons. So the question is, how does it happen? And for social sciences, of course, we look at crime rates, we look at things that would be a logical response. Crime has been going up, and so the prison population is a reflection of criminal activity. Answer, no. Crime wasn't going up during that period. So the thing that we zero in on is drug law. That's responsible for most of the increase. And then the question becomes, well, were drug laws passed as a reflection of people's drug use and possession and sales? Answer, no. So there's a sociologist by the name of Erickson who looks at criminal justice policy. Oh, 1 minute? Damn it. Dudes, come to my breakout session. Anyway, Erickson says the following. Criminal justice, so it appears to be incredibly irrational, right? It's not, if you ask Americans on the street, why do we punish? Most Americans would say, we punish to reduce crime. But I can prove to you, easily, quickly, in a 1-hour session, I can probably do it in 15 minutes. I can prove to you that the criminal justice system isn't designed to reduce crime. It isn't designed to enhance public safety. So it's only a failure if you think that's what it's about. And the argument from sociologist Erickson is this: the criminal justice system has never been about crime. The criminal justice system has never been about justice. It's about something else, fundamentally. And I think that most of our speakers are going to address what that is. I'm leaving you with a cliffhanger. Now you won't know what I think unless you come to my breakout session.
Fabulous. I love things that are unscripted. I just got word that we have another man who's spent time on death row for something he did not do. Suja Graham is here, witness stand. Would you stand up, please? Thank you.
I want to introduce J. John Decorral, who is the founder and force behind the Center for Returning Citizen. I met him recently. I'm looking forward to learning from what I hope will be my new Quaker Buddhist friend, who I read a couple articles about him and found out that, I think you used the words that he was addicted to crime, not to drugs, but addicted to crime, but is now on the road to recovery after a stint of 7 years and 18 years, 2 different stints. He is now doing work that I would like to hope I can help by making sure that when returning citizens come back, they are received in ways that allow them to bring out their best and be contributing citizens. John Dye, thank you.
How's everybody doing? First, I'd like to say that I had the distinct honor of taking Suja Graham to the Martin Luther King High School up in Germantown. And his testimony was so powerful, you had hardcore high school kids crying in the auditorium. That's just how good he was. By way of a little background, I served 25 years in the federal system. My last sentence ended in 2009. I did 18 years. During the course of that, the beginning of that imprisonment, I was blessed by the Creator to meet Dr. Matulis Shakur. For those who are unaware of who he is, he's a powerful, revolutionary, freedom fighter, one of the co-founders of the Republic of New Africa, and some of you know him as the stepfather and major influence of Tupac Shakur. Well, I came into his circle of consciousness. And for the next 12 years, I was blessed to be able to work